Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another Ranked and Reviewed. And today we are going to be doing Mathcore Legends, the Dillinger Escape Plan. And this is a genre I'm really not super into. And this pretty much is the only band that I listen to of this genre, at least this extensively. I've been listening to Dillinger for on and off 14 years, since like my senior year of high school. So 6 studio albums from Calculating Infinity 1999 up until their most recent album, Dissociation, in 2016. Would hardly call that recent, but that's basically their last album. The vocalist Greg had come out and said they're done. It was just the natural conclusion of their band, not like disputes or anything. But as chaotic and crazy and mathcore as they can be, they're also melodic and catchy and accessible to people like me that can appreciate but don't actively listen to jazz or polyrhythms or odd time signatures. Like I'll admit I might be a complicated person, but in terms of music tastes, I like my 4/4 music, and maybe 3/4 sometimes. It's not that I dislike odd time signatures. A lot of my favorite music is in 4/4, and pretty much all the music I write is in 4/4. So for Dillinger Escape Plan to sneak its way in and not be one of my favorite bands, but definitely be like the best band of that genre and be a band that I actually really enjoy listening to, means a lot. So let's get the fuck into it. This wasn't a super easy band to rank. It was nice that they only have 6 albums. I'm not doing their EPs. I'm probably gonna get some hate for this because people have strong opinions about Dillinger and like which album should be where, but 6 albums, none of them are weak by any means. In fact, they have like no bad songs either. There's like no songs that I really dislike. So the way the list is, it's basically, excuse me, unprofessional. The way the ranking is, it's basically the bottom 3 albums and the top 3 albums. But even the bottom 3 are all worth listening to. So let's get the fuck into it. And then I'll end up with my top 10 favorite tracks. So at the bottom spot, we have their last album, Dissociation. Still a solid B album. I know that Limerent Death is like one of their favorite songs they've ever recorded. But it's by no means one of my favorite Dillinger Escape Plan songs. Kind of like not the best album opener of all their albums. But I do commend Greg's vocal performance on this entire album. He sounds like he really put his heart and soul and energy into it. I just think the songs aren't as punchy or as the album doesn't flow quite as well. It's a 50-minute album. I think it's a little too long. Putting my feelings aside and like my nostalgia for like certain albums aside on these rankings, I try to look at things objectively too and put that into the ranking. And if this was like a first album that you ever listened to from Dillinger and like you had, feelings for it or sentimental value, I could see why maybe you'd put an album like this higher up. But for me, for this being their 6th album, I just kind of feel like some of it's a bit of a retread. And it's still worth listening to. It's got solid tracks. They definitely stuck the landing with the last couple tracks. Apologies Not Included is actually a great track, and so is Nothing to Forget. I do like the electronics in Fugue. And again, I like the vocal performance in Limerent Death, but it's not like one of my favorite Dillinger singles. And I just thought it was kind of one of their more low-energy albums, aside from like its moments. Like the albums that are lower on the list are probably more about moments of greatness rather than a cohesive listening experience. So bottom spot goes to Dissociation. Really not even close. But it is still a good swan song album. It's still very much worth listening to, but my least favorite Dillinger album. Next up, at the number 5 spot, is going to be Miss Machine. Yes, this is probably the one I'm going to get the most shit for. But like I said, no bad Dillinger albums. I'm not here to appease anybody. Much like Dissociation, this album is a series of good moments. This is the first album to feature Greg Prosciutto, or Pucciati, however you say his last name, Bouchette. And it's a solid album. Definitely better than Dissociation. Great tracks on there like Highway Robbery and Unretrified. Beyond that, Sunshine the Werewolf. Wait, Sunshine the Werewolf. Yeah, fuck, I meant to put that in my top 10. God damn, now I have to adjust my list. I forgot Sunshine the Werewolf. I fucking love that song. Okay, Sunshine. It's going to be a top 11. Fuck you. All right, sorry, that was an oversight. Sunshine the Werewolf is a fucking awesome song. Highway Robbery also, love the bass, and Unretrified. But as for the rest of the album, it's just a series of moments, the more chaotic sounding stuff. I don't particularly love the mix in songs like Panasonic Youth Band, Van Damsel, or Perfect Design, your more chaotic songs. The guitar wasn't super loud on this album, and I just think the mixing on it wasn't particularly great. But it is a solid album. I can see why most fans would probably hold this in higher regard. But I think it's their fifth best. I think it's their fifth best album, and still a solid first framework album for Greg. But I just think their best albums were ahead of them. So yeah. Next up at number 4 spot, which surprised me, we have their first album, Calculating Infinity, which is the only studio album without Greg. It's got Dimitri. This album was very much ahead of its time, and definitely like a legendary album in its own regard. And it all came down to preference here. I thought this was going to be their lowest ranked album because I was just like, oh, it's probably just going to be their raw Dillinger escape plan that's just all heavy, no experimentation, and by experimentation I mean on the more melodic side, not experimentation on the chaotic side. But I have to give respect to this album for it being as groundbreaking as it is. Dimitri's vocal performance is solid, and the heaviness of Ben's guitar writing is still solid and consistent. This is their most consistent album from front to back. To me, the album really kicks off with 43% Burnt, Jim Fear, and then oddly, my favorite track on the album is the instrumental, the #, number sign, ... track 4. I also like Destro's Secret and Clip the Apex, also solid tracks. But yeah, it's a very raw, very straightforward, similar album. So the listening experience as a whole is easier to get through than, say, Miss Machine or Dissociation. But it lacks the things that appeal to me to make it, say, a top 3 or one of their best albums. But it is better than I thought it would be. It ranked higher than I thought it would. And it's definitely an excellent start to their legacy. It's one of the more important albums that ever came out for this metal subgenre. All right, now for the top 3 albums. These are the ones that I've listened to the most. They've got the most sentimental value, and I just think it's the Dillinger Escape Plan at their best. And they were all released consecutively. And they're all roughly tied with each other, but I do have preferences. Number 3 spot goes to One of Us is the Killer, coming out with like the best opening 3 tracks. The chaotic yet catchy nature of Prancer, the intense dynamics and drumming of When I Lost My Bet, and then leading perfectly into like one of the catchiest, most melodically beautiful title tracks, One of Us is the Killer. Memorable chorus, awesome music video. A song I listened to a lot back in the day when the album came out was Nothing's Funny. Really enjoy that track. But Understanding Decay, more chaos, C-sharp minor scale on certain parts that I really enjoy. Really enjoy the, the instrumental, the CH375268-277 ARD, whatever the fuck it's called. I think it's a solid instrumental. And yeah, that's this album has a lot of sentimental value for me because I started my current career with this album playing quite a bit when I was going through like the hiring process and the registration process. This album was on basically when I was going through a pretty big life change, and a lot of positive memories associated with it. And I just think it's a really solid, consistent, easy album to listen to from front to back, and could have been their top album they stuck the landing a little better with the last couple tracks. Not that Crossburner or Threat posed by Nuclear Weapons are weak tracks, they're just not as strong or as punchy. So this album lacks the bookend effect, but those first handful of tracks really do elevate it towards the top. And it's a very accessible, awesome album to listen to, whether you like the more melodic side or the more chaotic side of them. And then the top two, this one was, these two were really hard to pick between, but obviously I did it. Number 2 spot goes to Option Paralysis. This album. I was reading on Wikipedia that Ben, the guitarist, said that this was like, at least at the time, like their heaviest album. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I'd say Calculating Infinity is probably their heaviest album, or another album I haven't talked about yet. But Option Paralysis, of course, is heavy as fuck. But it's got a lot of melody in it that intertwines beautifully within the chaos. Farewell Mona Lisa, which starts on a very chaotic level, but then ends with a beautiful interlude, and then ends chaotically. And then Good Neighbor, which is like one of their most accessible, catchy, heavy songs with like time signatures that you can actually digest, but also still enjoy the chaotic nature of their writing style. So Good Neighbor is like one of the best songs. And then it follows up with Gold Teeth on a Bum, which has one of their best choruses in my opinion, and is kind of like the Black Bubblegum of this album. Just kind of like your mostly clean vocals, easy, almost like radio single, but it's just got a little even more of an edge to it that I particularly enjoy. Crystal Morning, Endless Endings, just back to back, just pure chaos. Room Full of Eyes, great drumming, great like riffs that you kind of feel like you're like running away from like a bank robber scene or something. It's just like great running music on this album, and good guitar riffs on Chinese Whispers, and then Parasitic Twins is just a beautiful closing track, which I particularly enjoy. I was trying to squeeze all this onto one recording, but I guess I will need extra time to talk about their number 1 album, which is Ire Works. This is the album that got me into Dillinger Escape Plan. So, putting aside musical objectivity, this is the most sentimental album for me. I started listening to this band in 2008 because of my best friend at the time, and I actually got him this album for Christmas. And he brought me a copy, and I had it on my iPod. My iPod. Listened to it front to back quite a bit, and it still holds up. The 2 leading singles, Black Bubblegum and Milk Lizard, are their 2 best songs. And obviously that's putting aside their like, I guess your more core traditional mathcore sound. Milk Lizard and Black Bubblegum are much more digestible and easy to listen to, but they're both catchy as fuck, have memorable lyrics, hooks, riffs, and just the ending of Milk Lizard. You just kind of feel that sense of urgency. But beyond that, Fix Your Face and Lurch, you can't fuck with like the crazy sounds you got off of Calculating Infinity or Miss Machine. They're very much present in Ire Works, and I think Dimitri actually does guest vocals on Fix Your Face. I haven't talked about this a whole lot with these other albums, but what I particularly love about Ire Works are the so-called transition tracks, the instrumentals. I just think that Ire Works as a whole, like the 13 odd tracks from front to back, it's just an entire experience. Like whether it's When Acting as a Particle or When Acting as a Wave, which When Acting as a Wave is very much like one of their absolute best. It's one of the best transition songs I've ever heard. It's just so chaotic and glitchy, electronic with like hard hitting riffs. I just love it. And then Sick on a Sunday is a great way to follow up Black Bubblegum. There's just a lot of nostalgia and a lot of good feels attached to this album. 82588 is one of my favorite songs from them in terms of like just short, punchy songs from them that have just like a candy from the children, candy, whatever the fuck they say at the end, where they're just all like headbanging at the end. Like I love that song. And then of course, unlike One of Us is the Killer. Ire Works sticks the landing with the end. It kind of does the opposite of One of Us is the Killer, actually, where Fix Your Face and Lurch are great openers, but not great like One of Us is the Killer or even Option Paralysis. But throughout the album, like the middle and towards the end, it just picks up steam throughout, and then it maintains that at the very end with the trifecta of great Dillinger Escape Plan songs. Dead is History, where you got melody, you got electronics, and then you got like a awesome epic chorus or bridge, which leads to like a very melancholy but heavy ending. You got a little bit more chaos with Horse Hunter, which has like great heavy jazz guitar work in there. So you had to throw a little bit of chaos in there, which blends perfectly there. And then you got this weird like lounge jazz song in Mouth of Ghost, but it's a perfect way to end an album. So yeah, this is definitely the album that I could talk the most about. And to me, it's their best album. I know that based on other ratings and rankings I've seen, that most people think that this was a step back from like Miss Machine, but I think they fucking got better. I think Dillinger Escape Plan has been largely consistent, and they've taken like steps forward. I just think it really just comes down to preference. I think all 6 of their albums are great. I love their chaotic mathcore music, but I also fucking love their melodic side. I love when they get catchy. I love when they lean into like alternative metal sounds and do more clean vocals. Even though Greg's a monster on the heavy vocals, he's even guest featured on like a lot of other bands, like Architects or Lamb of God. He does a great job on those features. But Ire Works is kind of like, to me, like the definitive experience. And then like a very, very close second and third are Option Paralysis and One of Us is the Killer. In fact, let me just fucking recap once again. Least favorite to most favorite, even though they're all great albums: Dissociation, Miss Machine, Calculating Infinity, One of Us is the Killer, Option Paralysis, and Ire Works. And my top 10 tracks, or top 11. Farewell Mona Lisa, Understanding Decay, Room Full of Eyes, Sunshine the Werewolf. How could I forget that song? Prancer, When I Lost My Bet, Good Neighbor, One of Us is the Killer, Gold Teeth on a Bum, Black Bubblegum, and Milk Lizard. So yeah, like my top 5 tracks from them are like their more mainstream, accessible songs, maybe except for Good Neighbor, a little bit more chaotic there, but I enjoy pretty much all their work, and I listened to their EPs at one point, thought they were good too. And they're just an awesome band with a solid legacy. So comment what you agree or disagree with. How would you rank them? What are your favorite songs? What albums speak to you? Have you ever fucking seen them live? I haven't. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.